Good afternoon and welcome. I am Jim Haldeman, the Business Development Manager for Instrumentation here at the Lesman Instrument Company. I wanted to thank you for participating in today's webinar, where we'll be discussing the upgrade of the recently obsoleted UDC2500 and 3200 to the new UDC2800 controller. We're fortunate to have Dan Weisey with us today as our presenter. Dan has been with Lesman for some 40 years and has experience in advanced controls, including Honeywell's complete line of UDC controllers since their inception. Dan has worked at Lesman, as I said, for many years, and prior to that, he worked at Barbara Coleman. Dan has a vast experience in the lab, as well as in a plant environment conducting both startup and troubleshooting support. I'd like to state that this webinar, we tried to target close to 60 minutes, but due to its quantity of information, may run a little bit longer. Should you need to leave the webinar, it will be recorded and will be posted on our website so that you may go back and watch it again, or refer any of your colleagues who you feel may benefit by watching it to do so. Questions can be asked using the question tab within the toolbar on the right. If I see a question that I know will be addressed in a future slide, I will reply to the question as such. If it is a question that needs to be asked at that time, I will ask the question on your behalf to Dan. And of course, there'll be a question and answer session when it's completed. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dan. Dan, please begin your presentation.
Thank you, Jim. Welcome to the webinar, and we're going to talk about the UDC2800 today because it is the replacement for both the UDC2500 and the UDC3200. What it is it's a all the electronics on the inside of it are updated, and that's especially evident in the new display that you're looking at in the graphic there. The Bluetooth communications is included with all of these. So, and internally, it's actually a full-blown UDC3200, but it's priced like a UDC2500. That whole generation is about 18 years old now. And the question came up, what best fits the need as a replacement controller for the huge installed base out there? And the answer is something that's 100% backwards compatible, which is what we have now, the UDC2800. So what hasn't changed in all of this? Well, the panel cutout, which is a quarter DIN, is still the same. So a 2800 will fit into the same cutout as a 3200 or a 2500. The screw terminals on the back are identical because the case itself is the same. The 2500 case, the 3200 case, and the 2800 case are all identical. They still use the same Phillips head screws, square washers, but the most important thing is that the functionality of a terminal and the location of it is the same between all of these. Whatever was on terminal number 26, which happened to be input number 1 plus, is still on terminal number 26. The plastic case, which is circled in red over here, is the one that has the wiring terminals on the back, and that's the part that fits into the hole in the panel and gets secured there and the wires attached to it. The chassis is the other part, all the electronic boards and the display part. An existing 2500 or 3200 can go bad, and you can actually take the chassis out, replace it with a 2800 chassis, configure the 2800 chassis, and it'll work because there's no rewiring changes needed. Just slide the 2800 chassis into it, and you're up and running. By the way, people have asked, how do you do this? Well, on the sides of the chassis, there's two little tabs up there. You take a screwdriver, you just lift them gently, and the chassis actually just slides right out from the case. So reusing the old case will work, but, and it's a big but, if you keep the old case has the old label on it that has the old model number and serial number. Okay, that means that there's the chassis isn't properly identified. And that can be a problem if, you know, you ever have a problem, somebody is unlikely to pull the thing out and read what's on the inside, they're likely to read what's on the outside. And what I'm talking about is illustrated on this slide On the right here, there's the outside of the case, and there's the case label, and there is the model number there, and the serial number is directly underneath it. That same model and serial number is shown over here on the inside of the case, again, circled in red with that paper label on the bottom. And here's the chassis, and it has a paper label on it with the model number and the serial number. Now note also, because this is the chassis, these gold things right here, those are the gold plated fingers on the end of the cards that slide into connectors at the back of the chassis back here. And that leads me to the second reason why you should probably rewire the new case instead of reusing the old case. Those gold plated fingers connect to the spring contacts in the back of the case. And the spring contacts can get dirty over time, and that can create electrical connection issues. And this is really important because the signals coming into it and the signals going out of it go through the wiring on the back, but they get to the electronics through these spring contacts. Rewiring a new case that you get with the controller avoids the dirty spring contact electrical issues that are likely to happen over time. And it's important, again, to realize that there's no change in where the wires go. If something comes off terminal number 16, it goes back on terminal number 16. Again, because the cases are all identical. The 2500 case and the 3200 case and the 2800 cases, they're all identical. So in my opinion, reusing an old case should just be a temporary solution. You should really rewire the case when you have the opportunity to do so. Just one caution is that I have pulled chassis out of cases hundreds, if not thousands of times under power. There's less reason to do so now because there's no jumpers or dip switches on the inside like there was back in the 90s, okay? But even so, I'd be careful with the 2800 because it's a new design, just haven't had enough experience with it yet. I would actually suggest that you power down a 2800 before pulling it out of its chassis. This is the part that I love here because I started with this in 1987 when I came to Lesman, and the original UDC3000 was only 6 months old, been introduced just 6 months before that. The menu you're looking at on the screen right there is the same menu that the UDC3000 had in 1987. I love it because I haven't had to relearn the menu, and that's why a lot of people continue to use UDCs, is they don't have to relearn the menu. The 2800 has the same menu. There's a couple of operational keystrokes that are different, but we're going to go through that in both on slides and in the live demo later on. Now we'll run through the few things that are canceled, aren't there anymore. We'll go through what's changed and what's new. The tube on the right here is called a radiomatic. It's an obsolete infrared sensor. It used a thermopile non-contact technology to get a surface heat measurement. And the characteristic of that signal was very oddball. And up until the 2800, the Honeywell controllers have always had an input type for the radiomatic. Since I doubt there are any of these still in service. So does Honeywell, because they took away the radiomatic input type. All modern infrared transmitters use a conventional 4 to 20 output that's compatible with all normal loop controllers. Don't confuse the infrared from the radiomatic with the infrared COM port. The 2500, 3200, this little black circle or oval down in the center center bottom down there, was behind it. There was an infrared receiver down there that could have been used with Process Instrument Explorer. That was a software package that I normally call PIE that you could use with an infrared dongle that plugged into a USB port to communicate with the controller. That's gone. We don't use Bluetooth anymore because they don't use infrared anymore because they've now gone to Bluetooth. The keypads have changed. It went from an 8-key keypad to a 6-key keypad, and the 2 keys that are missing on the 2800 are set point select and the run hold buttons. The functionality is there. It's just that it's done with other key buttons. The solid state 1 amp relay output, which was code A, and it could have been either a control relay or alarm relays, is gone. It's just not available anymore. There is, however, an open collector output with which you can drive a standalone solid state relay to achieve the same output. There's no backdoor password anymore. About once a week, our inside guys get a call from somebody that says, hey, we lost the password. We got to enable the calibration thing. How do we get into it? And there's a backdoor password to use to do that, but that's gone. It's not there on the 2800. Instead, there is a new password reset function that we'll go through to show you what that is. There's no printed manual anymore on paper. You got to use the PDF that comes on the CD-ROM. Here are the two keypads. The 6-key one is on the left here, the 2800. The 8-key one is over there, and the two over here, set point, select, and run hold, they're gone. What is nice, however, is that they're the same mechanical type key switches that when you push the button, you both hear it click if your shop isn't too noisy, and you also feel it click, so you know that it actually clicked. And I expect the revised keypad to just be as reliable as the other ones were. Here are the changes down here. The function key in operational mode becomes the set point select key, which can be disabled if you don't want it. And I'll mention that later because it's fairly important if you use set point programming. The function key in configuration mode, when you're running through the menu, takes on the function of what an enter key would be in most menu navigations. You'll see that the setup key down here is connected to the up arrow key, and it says run hold. So if you hold down the setup key, press that once, you either go into run mode or hold mode when you're running the set point programmer. And the up and the down keys can both be used to change the set point by either holding them down and letting the numbers run on their own, or by moving the cursor to a different digit. The TFT display is really different. That's what makes it stand out apart from the older ones. We've gotten away from the segmented characters with this, and it's probably just a better display overall. A big difference, though, is that on the older one, the temperature was always on the upper display, like it is on the new one, but the lower display was directly below it. There were only two displays, and this was the upper display, and that's the lower display. On the new one, when Honeywell refers to the lower display, I actually changed that and call it the lowest display because they're referring to the one on the bottom down here. And this is really critical, and I'm going to say this 3 times to make sure everybody gets it. But when I first got one of these and I took it out of the box, I configured it and I went to change the set point like I always did over here, and I hit the up arrow to change the set point, and I got the message key error. I'm going, what the heck's wrong? How do you change the set point? And that's because on the lowest display down here, when you power it up, it defaults to output, not set point. Now it's only one keystroke with a lower display button down here to get it to say set point. And once you do that, you can change the set point up or down or wherever you want to, but you have to be aware of that's an operational difference between the 2800 and the 2500, 3200. When you take it out of the box, this is the screen on the left here that you're going to see when you power it up. They force you to use a default password and then to put in your own customer password. The default password is called original password. That's the factory default, and that password is 1234. So I hope you'll all take out your notepad and your pencil and write down default password 1234, so that when this happens, you don't go, oh man, I can't remember what that is, and then you have to get the CD-ROM out and stick it, find a CD-ROM drive somewhere, stick it in there and open up find the manual, open up and figure out what it is. Just write it down right now, please. 1234. That's the original password or the default password. It's got to be in there because Honeywell is cybersecurity conscious. There's Bluetooth on every controller, and because there's Bluetooth on there, it can be accessed from the outside world, so therefore you have to have at least this password. When you do that, after you enter the 1234 there, it'll pop to a separate screen, and it'll ask you to do your own custom 4-digit password. Now, if you forget what that password is, again, there's no backdoor password that our inside guys can tell you on the telephone to get around that. Instead, there's the restore asterisk function. And on a screenshot over here, that's actually what it's called. It's in the security group where you'd expect to find it. It's called restore asterisk. And when you run through this, it will again ask you for the original password, the one I just mentioned, 1234. And when you do that, it'll send you to the screen where it says, what do you want your password to be? And then you'll put in a password that hopefully somebody writes down and puts in the place wherever you save your passwords. The important thing to realize is that when you do this, none of the configuration settings on that controller are changed. The only thing that changes is the password. So you can do this on an operating controller and not have any problem with the fact that once you come out of this routine, that it will be different than it was before. It'll function just like it was before, except it'll have a new password in it. Now, you got to be careful because the previous password one was called Restore Asterisk. This one is called Restore Settings. And this function actually replaces what was a half-page procedure with the old ones that reset all the settings back to a factory default condition. Not a lot of people have to do this very often, but they just provided this new function to do that. When you run through it, this one, unlike the previous Restore Asterisk one, this one wipes all the settings clean. Whatever you had in there before is gone. You now have the factory default settings. And of course, factory default doesn't do anything. You don't know what input type is. You don't know which output's been activated. All the alarm settings are gone, blah, 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 blah. So this is back to factory original. What are the new features? Well, the biggest new feature out there is Bluetooth. Bluetooth COM currently works with the Apple iOS mobile app called Honeywell Easyset. And there's the icon for it there. You can find this in the Apple Store for your iPhone, download it, install it. There's a big list of features right here. I'm not going to read it because we're going to see them on the next slides, but the important thing to know is that the Bluetooth function on the controller is standard. It's not an option. It's not part of the part number somewhere. It's standard on every 2800 that comes out of the factory. There is a procedure for those people that have the old Process Instrument Explorer PIE software and have configurations for 2500s or 3200s that you can export those to a CSV file, import the CSV file into the 2800, and then let the Honeywell Easyset transfer that file to the 20, or let the Easyset software transfer it to the 2800. Now, the assumption here is that the hardware has to match. And again, the model number defines what hardware is in a controller and also what software functions are in there. So they got to match. You can't upload a configuration that has a relay output and expect it and load it up into one that has a current output. That's just not going to work. You got to have the hardware configurations got to match. And the EasySet software will also be the means to update firmware on the 2800 controllers and that'll happen in the next release, which is just down the road in October. Here are 4 of the typical screens you're going to see on the EasySet app. The first one here over on the left, actually, we're going to run through them one at a time, so let's just do that right now. Here's the pairing request, which is the initial screen that you get when you launch the app. It's asking, what controller am I going to connect to? Because it can only connect to one at a time. And if a lot of people have multiple controllers, so which controller do I want to connect to? So what happens is when you press this little button down here called pair, the controller itself on the controller faceplate will momentarily show you the pairing pin, which is a 6-digit number. But that pin only shows up for 8 seconds. So when you hit the pair on the iPhone app, you have to be ready to look over and get that 6-digit number over there. When you get that number, you enter that number into the blank part right here and hit the pair button, and then you'll also have to put in the 4-digit customer password, and then it will connect to the controller. We're going to do that live in the demo later on, so you can see what happens there. This is called the dashboard screen, and this shows you live, relatively live, the process variable, meaning the temperature, the local set point, and the output. Now, these dashboard values, they update every 10 seconds. So if you're running a set point programmer that updates more often than that, you'll have to wait 10 seconds until you see the next update. There is a thing where occasionally you get a corrupt value coming through Bluetooth, and that corrupt value is shown as a 0 over here. That 0 is not the real value that happened at the time. It's just the indication that there was a corrupt value there. So 0 is used as a corrupt value. The online configuration page is where once you're connected, you can configure the controller setting by setting. Now, when you do this, it's important to understand that you change one setting at a time. What that means is change a setting, download it, and there's a save button at the bottom of the screen there. And that happens real quick and within 2 seconds. Change a setting, download it, doing save, change a setting, download it, doing save. So it's one parameter at a time that you use to run this online setup thing. Some of the improvements in the 2800. Obviously on the display, we no longer have those segmented characters, okay? So you've got full-blown characters, it's just easier to read. The resolution is now 1/10 of a unit when you go over 1,000 units, so you can get a number like we see up there, 1,150.3 degrees F. This was done to comply with the heat treat NADCAP AMS 2750F protocol that says you have to have the 10th digit there. You have to have a 5-digit display is what it boils down to for temperature. And the new one, the set point programmer can run more than one 8-segment profile. And since there are 8 profiles, you can have 8-segment profiles, which totals 64 segments. So you can run bigger programs than the older controllers, or you can actually have sets of profiles that are different programs that you run as needed. Bluetooth communications we sort of covered. That's the iOS app, supports configuration and uploading, downloading. This to me was a big one. The Ethernet IP address is now keyboard configurable. And IP addresses, that 192 thing you see there. The older units required the PIE software and the dongle, the infrared dongle, and it was a whole deal just to put an IP address in it. Now you can do it from the keyboard like you can with all other stuff. 16-bit analog output has better resolution at 16 bits. The 0.1% full-scale accuracy is actually the accuracy of the old 3500, the high-end controller. So now this is the high-end accuracy, and it's better than the old 3200 or 2500, as you can see from the numbers there. It has a sampling rate of 10 samples a second compared to 6 samples per second on the 32 and 2500s. 4 set points and 4 PID sets. So anybody or people that have been using the 2500 in the past, now by using the 2800 are going to step up to the 3200 functionality because that's essentially what it is. The dual display, which used to be optional, is now standard. The auto manual button and mode, which used to be optional, is now standard. When you go to pick a digital input action, you have 2 or 3 times the number of tasks or actions that can happen when that in the list to pick from. It was quite abbreviated. It was like 12 on the 2500 and there's like 30 on the 2800. The optional second input is a low-level input. It can handle thermocouples and RTDs directly. It doesn't have to be a high-level 4 to 20 input. The Bluetooth configuration is standard and there's no more infrared port. Several 3200 control features are in this one that were standard on the 32 that weren't involved in the 2500, like ramp rate and integral limits and high-low limits. And all the math functions in the 32 translate now into the 2800. On the set point profile programmer, that's what this little thing up here is. You got ramp, soak, ramp, soak, ramp, soak, that kind of thing. So it generates set points automatically. One profile consists of 8 segments, and there are 4 ramps and 4 soaks. So there are 8 profiles, which by the time you combine them together, you get to 64 segments. To run a profile, you have to enable the profile. And the rule is the profiles are numbered 1 through 8. So if more than one profile is enabled, the lowest number profile runs first, followed by the next sequential higher numbered profile. So if you have profiles 1, 2, and 3 enabled, you have a 24 segment program that's going to start with 1, automatically transfer to 2, then automatically transfer to 3. So that's how you get this multiple profile program to run. There is a mode in this where you can advance in the middle of a program, you can put it on hold, you can advance back a segment or two or go forward a segment or two if you want to. I don't know who does this, but apparently somebody does because they have the feature in there. I'll probably try and show that during the live demo. And there's a rumor that there's some kind of indication for when you're running soak deviation on this. Soak deviation is where you set up a band to make sure when you're soaking that you stay within that band, and if the temperature goes outside of that, it stops the soak timer to let you actually soak at the band that's needed on that. But it wasn't clear where, how, or whatever. So if somebody finds this, would you please let me know? I'm really curious about it. So then the big question comes up. I've got 25, I've been using them. I got 2500s or 3200s. How do I cross over the model I'm using to a 2800 model number? What you're looking at on the screen there is the top half of the model conversion guide. It's just a single page sheet done in Excel like this. And it's real easy to use because if you've got the 2500, go down in this column right here and you say, well, I start with a DC 2500, and you move over here and you say, well, that's going to change to DC 2800. And I got a C for current output, and it turns out it's the same C over here. And then I've got an E for additional alarm relay outputs, and I move over here and it's an E. Okay, so you just move over. By the way, you'll note here that that A that I mentioned before, which was the 1 amp solid state relay, come across here and it's not available. So you just can't do that. So this is available by downloading from the Lesman website. You go to www.lesman.com and you'll hit our home page, and you, on the search box up there, you put in UDC2800 with no dashes or spaces in it. And this is the home page for the 2800. And you go about halfway down, you'll see right here, it's in bold and blue, and I've circled it, and it says model number crossover chart for help. And you click on that and you can download the spreadsheet. And if you miss this one, if you scroll further down the main page, you run into the tabs. And I think it's defaults to full description, but if you click on the product documentation tab, you'll see that underneath that is the crossover sheet. And the same thing would happen if you search for a 3200, you will find it there.
Dan, if I could just also note that on the toolbar, which you should have on the right side of your screen, there's a little box called Handouts. It says Handouts 1. And if you look in that box, you'll see there's a copy of that conversion document that you can download right now to your desktop, so you have it for the conversion.
Good. So people have asked, well, I don't have the old Process Instrument Explorer software. I have an Android, and the app isn't ready for the Android yet, so I can't do that. How do I configure my 2800? Well, the first thing you got to do is you got to know how your 2500 or 3200 is configured. So you got to go get the configuration record sheet. Okay, this again is the top half of it. It's a full page document. And you can download that from www.lesman.com. You go to the 25 or 3200 page, and you go to the product documentation tab again, and you'll see that the configuration record sheet is there. And if you use set point profile programming, then you should download the other record sheet, because that's a separate one for the set point programming option. So they're both up there. You can download them. Then what you do is you start going through the controller, group by group, parameter by parameter, and writing down what's on there. Because this over here, you'll see they have factory settings. You're not concerned about what the factory is. What you want to know is what your setting is here for proportional band or gain. Now, not all of these are going to show up on your controller, because some of them only show up when you have that particular requirement for it, or that if your device is configured for it. So you only have to fill in the blanks for the ones that you actually show up there, because those are the ones you're going to transfer over to the 2800. So once you have that configuration record sheet filled out, then you can install the 2800 and configure the 2800 using the keypad push buttons. So people have asked or said, I have multiple, or will have multiple 2800s out there. I want to use the Bluetooth app. How do I know which controller I'm going to connect to? Because it's important. They're different controllers and they do different things. So the way you know that is that each 2800 has a unique 9-digit Bluetooth ID code. And it's under the communications group under Bluetooth ID, and there you can see the 9 digits. It's a mix of letters and numbers. And it's sort of like, imagine address in that it doesn't change and it's unique. Okay, so each 2800 has a unique ID code. So the EasySet pairing screen will show all the Bluetooth ID codes within range, and that's what we're looking at up here on the side. That the 9-digit, I connected to two different units here because Bluetooth will scan and pick up any UDC within its range, which is probably 25 or 30 feet. So they'll all show up, and then you got to pick which one you want to connect to, because that's why it's a select device up here, because you're going to select one device to connect to. So you got to know which unit you're going to connect to by having gone in to find out what the Bluetooth ID is, because that's how they're identified, how the UDC2800s are identified in the actual app itself. So I say it might be prudent to label the controller with those, which is what I've done. There's the 9-digit code for one of them, and there's the 9-digit code for the other one, because I can't remember which one's which, because you can't give them, friendly names. You got to use that code there, and you might want to put that on the panel if, in fact, you're going to have to frequently pair up to a controller on the shop floor. People have asked, can the hardware cards be added in the field? And the answer is yes. The option cards, the Modbus cards, aux out, digital in, second input card. You can pull the chassis out. The cards always come with a paper instruction that tells you what slot it goes into and if it needs a cable or wire connected to it. So yes, you can add cards in the field. The EasySet mobile app will provide some means of updating the firmware come October in the next R120 release. Now, it's not clear how we're going to handle adding an option like set point profile programming if somebody buys a controller and then wants to add that in the future. We don't know whether that's going to take the form of adding a code to it, or whether we got to download some firmware to it, or what. Stay tuned for that. Should be coming shortly. So here's some key pushing stuff to associate with changing a data value. Like almost anything in the world, if you hold down the up or the down arrow, the value will go up or go down as long as you hold the button. A lot of times that jumps over where you want to be and you got to go back, but that's the way those things work. The other way to do it is if you have a multi-digit number, is that you want to put the cursor, which is under one digit, under another digit. And you do that here by holding the down arrow and then clicking the up arrow until the cursor moves to where you want it, and then you release it, and the up or the down arrow gives you the number changes on it. So some of the similarities between the 2500 and 3200 are that the setup key navigates, it actually opens up the menu, gets you into setup mode. The lower display key exits the menu mode, gets you back to operational mode. Once you're in the menu, the setup key moves from group to group to group to group. These are the major groups. And once you're in a group, that's where things change, because on the 2500, 3200, moving from function to function or parameter to parameter, use the function key. If you do that, that's not the same thing on the 2800. 2800 uses actually the up or the down arrow keys to move from function to function, but you have to use the function key as the enter to say, once I get to a spot where I want to do that, I hit the enter key. I use the up or the down arrow keys to make the movements, and then I use the function key again to pop out of it. So we're going to do that again in the live demo, where we're going to change input number 1 filter value on both the older 2500 and on the newer 2800, so that you can see the difference in navigation. And the other things to remember are that the old unit, the 2500, 3200, had a set point select button on there, which now is the function button on the 2800. And this means every time, if you have 4 set points on there, every time you hit the function key, it's going to pop from whatever set point it is up 1, and then recycle from number 4 to go back to number 1. And that will change the performance of the controller, because you're now asking it to control to a different set point. And it will bump the process because you're asking it to change set points. The key thing is that you can actually disable this function if you want to. So, and I'm going to show you that on the two 2800s, I have one is functioning and one is not functioning, or one has been disabled and one's working in the live demo. And it's really important when you're running set point profiles, because you expect the set point programmer to do what it's going to do. And if somebody hits the function key and goes to a different set point, it's locked at that different set point. The set point programmer isn't actually running the way you expect it to. Run mode is two keys in combination, and to change the password, you can use the, you got to move around like you normally do to change values in order to put the password in there. I'm going to reiterate here the lower and the lowest display. The lowest display on here has to say SP in order to change the set point. We're going to see that in the live demo. And there's one thing I haven't had a chance to test, so I just want to make you aware of it. Since the old 2500, 3200, if you used the set point programmer and you had a 10 segment or 12 segment program, which is bigger than the 8 segment profile that's available in the 2800, I don't know how the PIE to EasySet setup conversion goes. That's when you export the CSV file and import it again and tell it to upload. I just don't know how it works. So you got to be aware that you got to see whether it truncates it to 8 segments or whether it throws the additional 4 segments into the next program up or whatever it does. So just be aware of that if you're going to deal with it. Got to check on that. Just to reiterate here, because there are new numbers to work with, there's the password, the 4-digit number, default out of the box. It's 1234. Change it anytime. There's no more backdoor password, but restore asterisk function will reset the password back to 0000, after which you have to put in 1234 and then put in your own custom password. The Bluetooth ID is that 9-digit code. It's like the MAC address unique to each 2800. It identifies which controller EasySet mobile app's going to connect to, and I think it's worth labeling somewhere near the controller what that is so that you can identify which one it is if you have multiple controllers that you have to, pick one to connect to out of the multiples. And the pairing pin is a 6-digit number that you got to be ready to catch because it only shows up for 8 seconds, but there's no reason to record that value because it's going to change every time it comes up. So don't bother writing it down. You can probably remember the 6 digits, poke it in, and next time you have to do that, it'll be different. So what about the high-end UDC3500 that was part of this set of controllers that came out back in 2004 there? Well, the biggest thing that the 3500 offered was a dual loop control. It's either 2 independent control loops or cascade control. The 2800 doesn't do that, so there's no direct replacement for a dual loop controller. The 3500 had the 0.1% full scale accuracy, and that's what the 2800 has. So there's a usable feature there. The 3500 did have more I/O that's listed out there. You can read it. The 2800 is limited to 2 analog inputs, 2 analog outputs, so that's somewhat limited there. Not going to do the same thing depending on what the function was as 3500. Plus, the 3500 had quite an extended math function capability. You can see what the 2800 doesn't have listed on the slide there. So what that boils down to is some 3500s can be replaced by 2800s. It depends what it is. There is a future product on Honeywell's roadmap called Clarion. It's expected out probably sometime in 2024 that's supposed to have extended I/O, meaning there'll be a panel mount, HMI part, and then there'll be a cable down to a DIN rail mount box that has more I/O on it than it has on the back of the unit there, so that you can get, there's more places to connect I/O points to. And obviously you'll hear about that as that stuff comes out. So what is the roadmap or timeline for this whole new 2800 thing? Well, the current version is release R110. R stands for release, came out in August. As part of this, the FM, Factory Mutual Approved Limit Controller, is not here yet and won't be here until January 2023. It has to do with the approval process. They have the hardware, they have the firmware, but they got to submit it to FM. FM has to approve it and give them the okay to put the FM stamp on the label. And so that'll be forthcoming. The next release, called R120, due out in October. I've heard it's supposed to have configurable screen background colors. You can pick between a white screen or a black screen. The current one obviously is black, so you'll be able to pick white if you want it. There was some mention of a larger font size. Not sure what that's going to mean. Let's see what happens when that comes out. And the EasySet will then handle firmware updates at that point, so that you can get a firmware update from Honeywell, download it to one of the controllers. Now, the additional software apps, there's supposed to be an Android EasySet app due out in October. And then one with Windows that has Bluetooth due out sometime in 2023, undefined as yet. So stay tuned again for those releases. So what Honeywell UDCs offer is continuity. The UDCs are in their 34th year. And the configuration menu layout is the same as it was in 1988, which is why I love it. And it has the same case and the same wiring as the 2500, 3200, which has been out, those have been out there for 18 years now. So that's probably the bulk of what's operating out there. If you happen to have older 3300s, which were prior to the 2500, 3200, there are wiring conversion charts available. You'll have to ask for it. We can send you those wiring conversion charts for the 2000, 3000s. So what it boils down to is the 2800 is a direct replacement for 2500s and 3200s. I think they're really robust. They do hold up over time, and they hold up better than Windows does, as we saw today. Replacement parts are also available for them, which is a big thing because you can keep the controller running longer than something burns out and that you can replace it and get it up and running. Now we're going to do the live demo part here, so I have to transfer the screen to the webcam, and the webcam comes up, and you can see that I have a 3200, I'm sorry, a 2500 on the left with the old green displays, and I have two of these 2800s up there. And I wish I could fix the focus on this webcam, and I can't, so we'll have to live with whatever it shows us here. So the first thing I want to show you is right now on this 2800 here where my finger is, that says SP there in case you can't read it, which means set point, because I've been playing with it. The set point on the lowest display is 300. I'm going to power these down so that we can see them as they are in a recently powered up condition. So you're going to see them reset and come back up in the default condition. So in the default condition, the one on the left here has a set point of 300, but on my particular process right now, I got to run it at 310. So all I do after a start like this is hold down the up button, and it goes to 310, and I adjust it using the up and the down arrows, and there I am, okay? And of course, because it's hooked up and it's running, my process follows that. Now, if I try and do the same thing over here, where it's just reset, I hit the up key, and so it tells me key error. Hit the down key, tells me key error. That's because down here on the lowest display, it says out, meaning output, tells me what the output percentage is. To fix this, I just have to hit the lower display key over here once, and now the lowest display changes to set point, and now doing the same thing, I can change the set point to 310. Like that. Now it's 310. Now it didn't change up here because I'm on second set point. And so when I use the set point key up here, whoops, sorry. When I use the function key, it tells me the key's locked on that because I locked out multiple set points on this. So over on this controller over here, when I hit the function key, notice that it goes from up the second set point, up to the third set point, and up to the fourth set point. So now my set point of 300, I can change this one to 310, and it'll follow like it should. Like that. So just be aware that when you power the thing up out of the box, it'll default to output, and I got to change it to set point in order to change the set point one value on that. I want to now change I want to go into configuration mode and change the input one filter from whatever it is. I'm going to add one to it. I think it's at 7. I'm going to change it to 8. I'm going to do it on the 2500 and then do it on the 2800 so that you can see the difference in operation. So I get in the menu mode by hitting the setup key, and then I hit setup until I get to input 1 on the bottom. There's input 1. I enter that group, and then I have to do it until I get to filter on the bottom. There's filter, and it's currently at 8. So I'm going to add 1 and make it 9. Now I can pop out and I'm done. That's what it takes to change the filter 1 digit. Now watch what it takes over here on this one. Again, I use the setup key, get in the setup mode, and I move until I get to input 1 using the setup key. And I go through all the programs here because they're enabled. I'll put input 1. Now I use the function key to enter the group. And now instead of using the function key to navigate to filter, I have to use the down arrow. Down arrow, down arrow, down arrow, down arrow. And on this one, the filter is set at 7. I have to hit the function key to enter the filter function. Now I use the up or the down key in order to change the value. I'll make it 8, I'll make it 9 like it was on the other one. The function key then exits, and now I've written that number into it. And when I exit with the lower display, I'm now running with that different filter value. So you can see that the function key actually acts as the enter key on the 2800. And I want to run a set point profile on here just so you can see the thing running. And I think it was this one where it was enabled, so we're going to try it. I'm going to hold down the setup key and then touch the up arrow. So I'm holding that one down, I touch this one, and you can tell it goes to run mode. And it'll run, I can do the same thing over here, but I don't think that's enabled. Yeah, that one's enabled. The better one is the one on the right because of the lockout on the middle one here. You can see the set point is changing and the process variable is tracking it and it's going up. If I hit the lower display key several times, I'll get a funny looking code up there. That tells me, it says P1S1RA. That means program 1, segment 1 is in a ramp. And over here, it tells me the hours, minutes, and time left in that segment. And it's counting down. Now it's at 25 seconds, so it's counting down. If I hit the hold function, it tells me I'm in hold. And here's where I can navigate back or forth in the segment. So because I'm in segment 1, the only thing I can do is go up to a different segment. There's segment 3 ramp. And if I come out of hold, it'll actually run in segment 3 from the beginning. So that's that function where you can alternate segments back and forth. Now we're going to do the Bluetooth connection real quick. Here's my iPhone. There's the icon for the EasySet, the red one. I'm going to touch it. And at the top, it's very hard to read because we can't control lighting with the webcam. It's going to say select a device, and the one I want to connect to has the 9G at the end, so I'm going to connect that one. And it's going to say connect down here. Notice that the Bluetooth pairing code comes up, 913752. So I have to write that up there, 913752. And then tell it to pair, and it asks me for my 4-digit password, and I get success up there, and now I'm connected. And it's just, the lighting just makes it so hard to read, but I'm connected. And if I go to the dashboard, I'm going to get dashboard values. And these values, 400, match the controller over here that are actually on the thing, and they'll update every 10 seconds. So that's just the quick connection part of Bluetooth. And we'll probably schedule another webinar with a direct connection of the phone itself so that we don't have these lighting problems, so that the screens can be seen there that shows you other functions on the Bluetooth thing. So Jim, that about sums up the live demo part.
Great, Dan. So we've had quite a few questions that came through that I was answering in the background. One just popped in here, so I'll read it and Dan, you can answer it. So every time you power down the unit, it restarts, it always defaults to output or just the first time?
The answer is every time you power it up, it defaults, the lowest display defaults to output. And the fix is hit the lower display key once and it goes to set point. Then you can make the set point changes.
Okay, so it does that every time you power down?
Every time, yes. Yep.
Okay. Yep. So if anyone else has any questions, you can actually type them in the question bar, or you can raise your hand and then I will unmute you. We wanted to offer some value and show you how the new controller compared to the previous versions. Hopefully we've done so. As we said earlier, this webinar will be saved and will be uploaded to our website probably within 24 hours if you want to watch it again, or if you want to share it with someone else. So I want to thank everyone for your participation. Dan, I want to thank you for the...
It looks like we have a few more questions that just came in if you want to take a look at them.
Thank you. It's nice to have backup.
Open up the question box. They're asking, Jonathan is asking about lead times for 2800.
Okay, good question. Yeah, we're told right now lead times for 2800 are approximately 2 weeks.
And the last question is is the upgrade path for the UDC3000 equally simple?
I'm sorry, is the upgrade, say again?
Upgrade path for the UDC3000 equally simple?
The UDC3000 was the controller that ran from about 1987 to about 1992 or 3, and it had the membrane keys on it, like little bubbles, membrane bubbles is the keys. I'm surprised that there are many of those running. That's pretty old by now. They're over 30 years old. To upgrade a 3000, you would have to, the cutout is the same. It's still a quartered in, but you cannot put a 2800 into the case of a 3000, and the wiring is different for the 3000. We'd have to do a wiring change to get the wires on the right terminals for the 2800. The menu configuration is nearly identical, so the settings used for a 3000 would be, I can't think of anything that would actually change, but I think you could use them as is on the 2800. So does that answer the question?
I think so, and you should be able to get the specification for the 2800 off the Lesman website. So if you go through that specification, which gives you the model code configuration, just build the model code that you believe you need, and that would create your model number for you to do what you want. Another question came up. What will the lead times be for the high limit 2800? Well, that's a fantastic question. And so there's going to be a backlog of many hundreds of 2500 high limits that had to be converted to high limits to 2800s. So they're going to have to move through that backlog and ship all those orders before they get to yours. So I can't answer the question today as to how long it's going to take to get the high limit controls when they're actually available. It's a rather frustrating topic, and that's the best I can answer it at this point. So Scott, I wish I could tell you more, but that's what I currently know. Will the presentation be available on our website? Yes, it'll be recorded, or it is being recorded and will be updated or uploaded probably within 24 hours. I don't see any other questions. Do you see any, Oksana?
Actually, there's one more. The question reads as well, have they made any changes yet to the screen to hold up better outside? They heard rumors you cannot see screen when it is outside with sunlight.
Well, I think that's why the next firmware version is going to have the option to change the background from either black to white. So I don't think it's a question of it holding up outside. I think it's a question of visibility because of the resolution between having a black backdrop and a white backdrop. And that is, we're being told, going to be a firmware upgrade. You'll be able to select which color you want once you get that. So hopefully that answers your question. Okay, so someone's asking us if we have something potential for a high limit before this is available. The answer to the question is yes. We've tried to position ourselves to offer something to you to help you with a high limit option. I would ask that you contact Lesman at 1-800-953-7626 and have a discussion with Inside Sales. The option that we have is going to be a 1/8 DIN option versus a 1/4 DIN option. It's not a Honeywell product. It's something we can deliver to you quicker, and it would require a panel adapter plate, which we also have available, and it would require a different configuration, and it would require different wiring because it's a different controller, but it'll give you the results you need, which is a high limit control. So please contact Inside Sales. Okay, it looks like every time I say that's it, then we get more questions, which is good. I'm not seeing anything else. Oksana, are you seeing anything else?
Yep, from John. Is there plans to allow customer to customize the displays?
Other than changing the color, I'm not aware of anything. Dan?
I missed the question. Did you repeat it?
Are there plans to allow customers to customize the display?
I haven't heard about anything like that, and I have to say I sort of doubt it.
Well, let me ask the person who asked the question, are you referring to like changing a name, like having your name on the nameplate, or like a private label situation, or something like that? I guess I don't know. Possibly send me an email, jimh@lesman.com, with that question, and then I can send that off to Honeywell once we have a better understanding of your question to try and get a better answer for you.
There is another question about, is the 25,000 now available? I don't know.
The 2500 is no longer available.
2500.
They stopped taking orders on August 2nd for 2500s.
There are some units in stock still.
Correct. Lesman does have some inventory. Yep.
So we can sell our inventory.
Yeah. So contact again Lesman at 1-800-953-7626, and we can tell you what we have, and hopefully it might have more than you need, but if you need something quickly, then that's going to work. However, I don't believe we have any 2500 high limits available, but again, that can be discussed once you call the number.
Looks like that's it. Nothing else is coming up.
All right. Well, those were really all very good questions that we anticipated that you would be asking. And so I guess with that, we're going to end the recording. Thank everyone for your time once again, and I hope everybody has a nice afternoon. Thank you for your time. Thanks, Dan. Bye now.